Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third of the afternoon sessions in the Red Room. I'm Jeff Kennedy from the University of Auckland and pleased to be the session chair for now, but it's my great privilege to introduce Preston Winn. Preston's the Global Product Marketing Manager for Education Solutions at VMware. He's based in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to get straight into it with Preston. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Preston, also known as Preston, so I'm getting used to these accents. I love it, though. So I'm glad to be here with you today, and I'm super excited because I just came in yesterday, but I've come a couple times to New Zealand and Australia, and it is, it's like going to Europe twice, really, in terms of distance. And so, but I slept on the plane, and I am like on your schedule here. I expected to be exhausted, but I feel pretty good. So. As we get started here today, though, I just want to know kind of who's in the audience because it'll help me a little bit. I know everyone's sort of higher education focused, but how many of you are sort of on the technology side? Let's just start there. Raise your hand. Okay, down. And then how much on the curriculum side? Anyone on the curriculum side here? And then who do we have left? Who has not raised? Some of you didn't raise your hand. Administration? What were you going to say, ma'am? Who are you? Library. That's right. We got librarians here too. Okay, so we'll try and pull in some library talk here as we're going through too, because there's some good stuff there. Okay, so my role, the great thing about my job is I get to go all over the world and talk to universities, and so I think my value to you, I was teasing with Jeff, no one really cares who I am, but one of the cool things I think I can bring to you is what's going on with all those other universities and what that conversation is like. But I hope to get from you any feedback about, because I don't expect everyone to have the same experience either, right? So as we're going to talk today a little bit about a few different things. This has become a bit of a mashup of a presentation. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about education in general for just a second, and then kind of shift to kind of some end user issues around, which, if you notice in the session, is really about how do we get basically great digital content to anybody, anywhere, which there's a lot of conversations going on about this, but I think we can make it pretty interesting today. But what I hope to do is also kind of meld that in a little bit with cloud strategy and a few other things as we go through this, because I think it's getting increasingly difficult to just sort of separate all that stuff out, Now, we only have a half an hour, so we're going to have to move quickly. If I'm going too quickly, please don't be too shy to let me know it. And if you'd like to spend a little more time on something, I'd like to do that too, right? And frankly, it might be between you instead of between me and you. You know what I mean? It might be amongst yourselves, but let's get going here a little bit. So now this is a U.S. quote. I promise not to make this a U.S.-focused thing because I really don't want it to be, but I thought this was an interesting place to start if you want to read this. My question to you, so one of the things that's happening in the U.S. right now in higher education, I'm sure you're aware, and I'd like some feedback from you, is there's pressure to make change, and here's the pressure in the U.S. The pressure is increasingly expensive higher education to the tune of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, even for undergrad, right? It's coming out of your pocket, or as a dad, my pocket, right? Tough. At the same time, that there's frankly been some criticism of higher education from like the public sector in particular, but from corporations saying, look, you're not necessarily producing, students that have all the skills that we need. So these things are all coming together. They have a lot of skills, but they might not have exactly what the workplace is looking for all the time. So there's been this criticism, there's rising costs, and increasing competition from private entities, frankly, who are now delivering some education solutions, education offerings that maybe higher ed used to be able to offer, that they can no longer assume that they're going to be the choice, right? They've lived in a pretty comfortable world for a long time, and now they're like, back on their heels a little bit, like, what's going on? So I thought this was an interesting quote. Higher education in the U.S. really has to figure out how do we restructure the way that we earn, spend money, and monetize what we're doing, because we're going to be struggling here very soon if we don't. Okay, so my question to you is, and I think we've got people from not just us, anyone not from Australia or New Zealand that's sitting in the audience today. I know we have like 20 countries here, but okay, so most of us are from right in this corner, right? Are you from somewhere else, sir? And over there? No? Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Okay. He's like, doesn't even know I'm talking to him, but my apologies. Okay, so here's the thing. What is driving change in education in Australia? What is driving change in education in New Zealand? Or or are you not feeling it? I was here last fall, so I know you are feeling it a little bit, but I'd love to just hear if anyone's willing to share. What are some things? Does this resonate for you as well, or are they just totally set of? It's not the only thing pushing, by the way. Security. There's lots of things to do it. I just thought this was a great place to start. So, anyone have something they want to throw in the mix to start off? What's that? Right. Right. So that's that private sector thing that I mentioned too. Yep. Yeah. Definitely. So you're feeling that here. Like we're even having big corporations in the U.S., and I've heard this in the U.K. as well, that are just saying, you know what, we're just going to educate our own employees. We can do it cheaper, faster, and then we can just teach them the things that are absolutely critical for their job. And I'm not saying that's good, but it is happening. Okay, anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Okay, yeah. Is it primarily in those vocational areas that you're seeing that? Yeah, okay, good, love it. Yes, sir. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Did someone raise their hand over here? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of a disconnect maybe between the people driving the ship and the people on the ship a little bit. I think that's narrowing, but that's still an issue for sure. Yeah. Anyone else? Good points. Okay, well, if you think it's something, keep it coming. Okay, so we know one of the things that's changing is this idea of, you know, and there's more here than just learn anywhere, right? Learn anywhere we've heard a million times, but what that presupposes is that we're going to change the way we teach as well, which is maybe the hard part here, is getting professors to fundamentally change teaching so that learning can change. You know, I think this is happening, and I see it globally, but it seems to be a hot button issue, you know, sort of everywhere. Now, one of the things I wanted to bring up today is if you look at this slide, if you go back in higher education like 15 years or so, it was all about just connectivity, and frankly, you know, higher ed kind of pushed the boundaries there, and they're just like, hey, bring your devices. We'll give you access. You can connect, right? And that was the strategy at the time. So about 15 years ago, we saw that all over the place. Certainly in the United States and a lot of the developed countries, this became an issue. But I think pretty quickly, you know, I don't think connectivity or you know, just having access is necessarily a strategy. It's a good thing, but it's just a stepping stone. So the next thing is, okay, wait a second. Everyone's connected now. How do we get them the right apps and content that they need? Because that's really what is going to be helpful here. And where we're really going and what we're starting to see is people that are moving beyond that, saying, you know, that's great too, but what we've really got to do is solve the issue of all these workflows, whether it's an education workflow or a business workflow. How do we sort of connect the technologies in a way that helps do things more efficiently? Whether it's, again, learning. One of the things I love about higher education, and the reason it's I think the best space on the planet, is because you're like an amalgam of all the spaces on the planet. Your education, your healthcare sometimes, your retail, right? Sometimes there's point-of-sale devices. A lot of times there is in higher education. Their finance, on and on and on, right? Sometimes there's hotels associated. It's just crazy, all the use cases that there are. So it's a very, and you know, from a technology perspective, we have to figure out how to support all those different things. Okay, so I think how do we do those workflows? How's that going to help us? So I have another question for you. So if you buy into the idea that technology can improve education, let's just say that we're all here at this conference because we believe that, right? Let's just say that for a minute, accept that together, even if some of you may have questions. Just bear with me. If that's the case, what are the things that move the needle on learning? So of all the things that we could do, this is a little bit of a baited question, but let's just see what ideas we come up with. So there are lots of things that we can do with our dollars. There's lots of things we can do with our time. If our goal is to improve learning, what should we be focusing on? Like that silence. That means you're thinking, yeah. Student engagement, right? So, and then I would just say, how does technology help them engage? So what technologies would help engage students more than others that would actually, we think, move? At this time, honestly, we're kind of guessing at, I haven't seen any studies that are like, I did X and student outcomes went up, you know. Like the data is not quite there yet. I think we're doing things that we think are helpful, and there is certainly anecdotal stuff, and I think some early signs that this is a positive thing. So we're guessing here a little bit. So everything's safe. No one's going to be wrong here. So if student engagement is an issue, how are we going to engage these students with technology? What does that mean? What do we need to do? What are the most meaningful parts of technology that are going to engage students? Okay. Which is tough. I mean, in the U.S., we have incredible silos from state to state. I understand in Australia, states are pretty independent, right? And I'm not sure how it happens in New Zealand in that respect, but is it that way too? Okay, so a challenge. I like it, though. Like, how do we make that experience somewhat ubiquitous, like regardless of where you go, and have it be somewhere? I like that. Any other ideas? Yeah, over here in the corner. Right. Yeah. I like it. So that sort of social learning piece, which is really critical. I mean, look, so anyone, what's the ideal small group collaboration size? Anyone? What do you think? I know I'm doing Alex Trebek on you right now because I rub elbows with smart people. I don't know this myself, but I'm going to pass it on. Any ideas? Yep. Three or four, actually, is what I've been told. If you get too big, then there's too many voices. If you only have two, you don't get enough mix, right? So like something like 3 or 4 is really key. So the question is, how do we create technology maybe that eliminates barriers to doing that and that'll engage student and that's portable? I like it. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Well, I would just argue this, not from a technology perspective, but I think there's a technology discussion to have. I think our teachers, our instructors, are the number one thing. It's actually what we should be focusing on, not technology, in my opinion. Technology is like this sort of behind-the-scenes thing. But if educators can't learn how to use the technology in their pedagogy effectively, I think you could argue. I'm not saying we'll get no benefit, but until that happens, I question how effective technology. It's not about. It's actually not. And I work for a technology company. It's not about us. We're not an education company. We're a technology company at VMware. So. But I think some of the things we do help remove barriers to do some of the things that we're talking about here, right? So I am actually a big believer in just the technology being a little bit invisible, right? That it should just be learning should be front and center. Student engagement could be front and center, et cetera. Okay, so great ideas. I think this is a great quote because I think it makes the point of, we're not just here to fill minds, right? We're really here to change people, frankly. I mean, it sounds a little cheesy, but we are. If you can make lifelong learners out of people, I think, you've got success. Okay, so at VMware, so then the question becomes, if that's the goal, so I would actually argue two things. I would say, I think all the technology thing is great. I would say that the professors, instructors, and their ability to, their skill in deepening learning, right, is really key. And producing the skills, things like entrepreneurialism, things like critical thinking, creativity, things that they haven't traditionally focused on. If that can become a little bigger part of the curriculum, I think that's great. And then how does technology play a role in that? We can talk about that. I would say, though, that the content, that of all the things that we can easily control, at least in my world, great digital content and being able to deliver it to our students is sort of one of the things that we can do on a technology front that's going to move the needle. Right? I don't think the particular device that you buy or how, anyway, I think there's a whole discussion there about hardware versus software, but I think really that the content, great digital content, and being able to distribute it and get it out to students in a meaningful way is key. So at VMware, the question then becomes, well, how do you help that, right? And so I'd like to spend a little bit of time. This isn't a product pitch at all, but I just want you to understand kind of where our focus is and some of the things that we're doing with some of our customers that I think are pretty great. So these are the things in the bubbles are really the 4 priorities. I've been all over the world. I've talked to CIOs from everywhere that I can think of, every single continent, many of them. No one's ever told me they had a high priority that was ubiquitous or really big that was outside of one of these buckets so far. I'm not saying there isn't one, but my point is this captures a lot of what people are struggling with. They look at sort of their legacy IT practices, and they're like, we have to modernize this. Our learners, they're not on campus all the time anymore. Neither are our faculty. There was a quote earlier that I pulled off this because it was a corporate quote, but it was a survey that employees in big companies are spending 50 to 60% of their time away from their desk. The point is, it's just a different world now. How do we evolve that infrastructure to meet that? Public cloud is a huge thing. Again, once those learners and those employees or whoever you're talking about go beyond your campus, so too our IT must extend beyond the campus to the cloud, frankly. Or there's going to be a disconnect there. So how do we help you do that? From an end user perspective, from the perspective of students and faculty, which is where we're going to go on this discussion today, is digital workspaces. So how do we create a place they can go regardless of what device they're on, laptop, phone, tablet, regardless of operating system, whatever they bring to the table, Chromebook, underpowered, no computing power in it kind of a device. How do we make this just so simple for them? And how can they go to a lab in the university at one point and then look at their phone on the bus on the way to think about something and then pick their laptop up at home and just sort of seamlessly move, which is what they want and expect. How do we help them do that? And that's kind of where I live a lot. And then, of course, security is a concern across the board. So in the world of digital content, check this out. So there's this company, the Learning Council, who is focused 100% on digital content. This is a little bit K-12-y, this particular one, or primary and secondary ed, but it makes the point that there is the world of digital learning environments is no longer just your LMS, right? It can't be. I mean, that's still a very important part of it. There's nothing wrong with an LMS. We need them and use them. The thing is, though, just in applications alone, this company has identified 71 different kinds of digital content. So I'm not here to stress you out. My point is, if we believe that aligning great digital content with students, along with improving teaching, and doing some of the things we have, making it portable, making the experience portable, encouraging collaboration. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how removing some of the barriers today to doing the things that you're talking about, whilst also delivering great content, really is more likely to move the needle than almost anything else that we do, outside of our actual instructors themselves. So what we have is this concept of a digital backpack. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, so in IT, we have about half of us or a little more that are IT. What have we been great at doing for the last 20 years? We're great at delivering stuff to devices, right? And if you happen to have access to that device and a password that'll get you in and it happens to be on the domain, you're good, right? But this is where we're going to get into our Windows 10 discussion a little bit today too. What we're proposing at VMware is that shift a little bit, actually a lot bit. That now, instead of delivering stuff to devices, we're actually delivering to identities. So identity becomes this new perimeter. And what that enables is for that person, you, me, a student, to be able to move between devices and access this digital workspace, digital backpack, whatever you want to call it, from any device, anywhere, anytime, to improve productivity, but more importantly, maybe to engage them and just give them the accessibility that they're used to and want, that they need in their daily life. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through here. So what is amazing to me about this product, I use it every day, and all I wanted to say is the value of it for universities, and the reason they love it is because they can, in such a complex environment, healthcare, education, retail, all these different, the business school, on and on and on, right? There's so many different little silos and needs and use cases and demands. We don't see it in any other vertical. The mix is ridiculous in higher education. It's crazy. That's why I love it. I think it's intellectually, it's just so fun to work with you because I think it's great. You can deliver for that broad set of users any kind of application, whether it's a brand new cloud native application that's cutting edge. I was just with a big Division I school in the U.S., and I was in the audience, he was speaking. He has a DOS program that he delivers through this product to this one professor. He's been using this DOS program since, I forget the date, 20-something years. But think of that. For that professor who's just used to that, to be able to deliver it a little more securely and amongst other more sort of modern applications, that's a cool thing, right? And it's for IT, it's like, it's awesome. Like for them, the efficiency of doing that is huge. So whether it's a cloud app, a virtualized application, which is probably the number one thing, well, it is the number one thing that we see you deliver to end users is virtualized desktops and apps. That's certainly where we've done a lot of work with people over the years. But now the mix of applications that you can deliver there's really nothing. I'm not aware of anything that you really couldn't deliver. I asked this question of a bunch of universities in Las Vegas last fall who have been doing this for like 5, 6, 7 years. And I asked, is there any app you can deliver? And they said, technically no. There's no application we can't do. From a licensing perspective, there's some Oracle stuff we can. That was it. That's all they said. Everything else can really be done. So we're breaking down those barriers. The barriers are broken down, right, to being able to deliver any app to anybody. The focus here has been on user experience. How do we make that literally feel like they go to a store, literally a store, there's this, and buy the device, put in their credentials. If you notice now when you buy a Windows device or an iPhone, you can put in your work email or your university email right when you get it, right at the store and at Target or Best Buy or whatever you have in New Zealand, and you just put that in there and boom, you're now under management. I mean, that's how easy it's getting. So it's really simple. How do we solve all those use cases for you? So this is University of Aberdeen. University of Aberdeen has 2 years ago started doing, or already, this use case that we published was about 18 months ago. So 2 years ago, they came out with this and built it. They are delivering, and for them, what this really does is it helps them attract and retain students because of the technology that they offer. This is their words. And then it helps them sort of level the playing field. So a student can bring the cheapest, most inexpensive Android tablet and still get access off campus to the Adobe Suite or AutoCAD, right? So they can still, because all that is running in the data center, not on the device, right? But what we're saying now is you can couple that with maybe a native email client for your employees and the LMS web page. By the way, it's in single sign-on, so it just becomes this one place they can go to get everything. Now, the world of Windows 10 is an interesting world, and when I thought about this, I thought, we can talk about virtualized Windows, but we've been doing that for a long time. If you want to have that discussion, I hope you'll come up and we'll talk to you about it. It's, changing the IT management practices around PC labs is a no-brainer. I mean, I'm not here to, whether it's with us or another company, frankly, it is inevitable in my mind that at some point it will approach 100% virtualization. It just makes too much sense. You might not be ready yet, totally get it, but at some point to have all that stuff running in the data center instead of on 122 endpoints and have to manage those 122 endpoints manually, it's a no-brainer. But that we've been doing for a long time. So I thought the more interesting discussion was how do we, was around the actual management of the operating system, right? So Windows 10 is Microsoft standing up and saying, instead of using things like SCCM and domain join practices, we're moving into this world of enterprise mobility management. This idea that, like you've already been able to do, you need a new app for your iPhone, you just go and it just installs and you're done, right? There's no testing that needs to happen. You don't worry generally about conflict between the applications and all that kind of stuff. So Windows 10 is now in this place where they've been able to get to the point where they're doing that. We're very excited about it because for us, what it does is it adds not just modern Windows applications, but even these Win32 apps that you've been distributing from a legacy perspective into that same mix in that digital workspace that we're talking about. So you're really talking, we couldn't really do that before, not the legacy apps, right? That's new. So we've been working really hard. So how do we help you overcome some of the unique challenges in Windows, but not so that your end users don't really have any of those big issues? So the truth is, sort of traditional PC, now that our users are not always on campus, it just falls apart, really. You can get by, you can limp by, but you are not providing the user experience. And Windows 10 is Microsoft's recognition of this. They're saying, we get it, this needs to change, and they're doing it. So they have no, once it's off campus, we lose visibility, we can't configure, make changes until it's on the domain. So it can take days, weeks, months, whereas in modern mobile practices, you can do that really from anywhere. So we have really 3 areas that we focus on. Device and OS lifecycle management. So I'm not going to go into these in depth, obviously, for today, but we're really talking about being able to manage the operating system and secure the device itself. And then secondarily, those are the first sort of 3, configuration management, even OS patch management, all the way into software distribution, and finally, really kind of end-to-end security. So if you were to ask me, like, can you really do everything with MDM, with, in our case, AirWatch, can you do everything that you need to, that we used to be able to do in traditional? I think the short answer is yes. It's taken about a year for us to get where we're at now, but I think there are some really, really minor exceptions, but the advantages at this point far outweigh anything that, that you can't do. So that being said, what I think is great about Windows, again, from my perspective, is that it makes it easier for end users to get up and running, much, much, much easier. And it's easier on IT. So the ability for IT to get these devices up and running and configured, get them cloud domain joined, get them rolling quickly and easily is now a reality. So if you do need to manage the operating system on a device on individual endpoints, the day has finally come with Windows 10 and with our solutions that you can do that. Now, how many of you are using Windows 10 today already? Out of curiosity, so you're already there. Are you using SCCM to manage it still? No? No one wants to admit? No? So what are you using to manage it? Yeah. So the important thing to understand here is one of the big things that we struggle with when we talk to people about it is everything I've said is true, but you've been using these management methods for how long? It's hard, and people are worried. They're worried about, am I going to lose my job? Is this something that, but the truth is, people who go through it, 100%, I've never met anybody that didn't feel this way. Once you go through it and you begin, not only can you, or let's say, the other issue, sorry, before I go on, is, we already own SCCM, right? We already have it, and it works for what we do, and we have it. And that's totally true. So what we're able to do actually is coexist with it now, which gives you all the advantages of being mobile. Maybe you've already paid for SCCM, you own it, so you don't really feel the need to get rid of it. But when the time comes and you need to support mobile learners or workers better, you can sort of join them together. And in my opinion, with time, EMM will just become your only platform that you use. But just know that is now a possibility. So everything can be configured over the air, whether on their domain or not. So that's the beauty of it. So you have to rethink really how we work with Windows 10. So the last thing I just wanted to say is we've talked about, yes, we can deliver to any device. And really, now with Windows 10, we can deliver any application as well, whether it's virtualized or a native, like Win32 app or a modern app from Windows, everything, Android, iOS, OS 10, any application, web apps, SaaS apps, cloud native apps, they can all be delivered in the single one digital workspace, which is amazing, right? That's now, you've broken down all those barriers of operating system, version, you got some crazy business thing in the back end that uses Internet Explorer 6 with a certain plugin, and you can deliver that to this digital workspace, and they can consume it on a Chromebook. I mean, that's talking about breaking down barriers, right? That's when this gets exciting, I think, when you start to, now I'm starting to get it, right? And what we hear from our customers is once you get to this point, it fundamentally changes the relationship that IT has with end users. Because in the past, they come to you, what do? They come to you a minute or two before, a day or two, a week maybe, before class starts, and what do they ask? I need this software on this lab. Can you do that? And you're like, we've kind of got a lot going on, and it starts in 2 weeks. It's a tough thing to do. Once you get this infrastructure in place, it's like, can you give me 10 minutes to finish up what I'm doing? I'll get that pushed out for you. I mean, that's literally how easy it is. It's push button, because you're managing one image on the back end. You just push it out to multiple devices. So that's why I say I think it's inevitable at some point that, in terms of virtual desktops, that you'll have that ability. So any device, any application. But what I wanted to just finish with is cloud architecture. And the reason is, yes, we kind of lead and talk about this digital workspace that really does and is changing the way education's delivered and consumed, and outside of education too. But the fact is that it's built on a foundation of software-defined infrastructure, including cloud. So one of the great things that we are very excited in that is a big piece of is what we call Cloud Foundation. And what this basically allows you to do is take your data center that you already have and have created and extend it seamlessly to any cloud. So that could be AWS, IBM, others, right? So our own vCloud Air Network. So we have all these options. Our goal at VMware is to really sit between you and Apple and Microsoft and Google and Palo Alto Networks, whatever it is that you're leveraging and using, even your software providers, frankly. One of the big things, one of the big asks I get from our team here is, we've been told by our local software vendor that we cannot virtualize Adobe. You know what I do? I just say, well, let me just connect you with this customer and this one, who are all doing it in the US and Canada and the UK. I don't even get in the middle of it anymore. I just connect them, and they go back to their software vendor and say, well, other people are doing it, why can't we do it? And it overcomes the problem. So we just want to sit and be this neutral party that sits in the middle. If there's interest in you, and any of you, to talk about, I mean, this NSX piece that you see in here, so the data center is really 3 components. It's server virtualization, storage, but now it's also networking, virtualized networking. This is a booming part of what we're doing right now in education. The security and the scalability that you can do with this is unlike anything you've seen. Well, this is the only product I've ever worked with in my entire career, 15 years in education, where our customers say, I mean, they're like more excited about it than I am, because it changes all their workflows. So if there's interest in that, if there's interest in cloud strategy, if there's interest in anything in that regard, please let us know. We appreciate your time with us today. We got through almost everything, all right? I was just going to circle back on this today. But just know that we're here to help you solve your big concerns. And we hope we get that chance to chat with you a little bit. I'll be on the outside, just walk out the door here if anyone wants to just chat or introduce themselves and let me know kind of what you're doing. I'd love to hear it. But thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.